Good afternoon. This is the Scio Township Compensation Commission, and I would like to call the meeting to order at 1 minute after 2 on Friday, February 2nd. And I'll start with our roll call. John Boyd, present. Renee?
Present.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Klubeck. Commissioner Hargett.
Present.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Just barely present.
And Commissioner Jackson.
Present.
And we also have President Aurora and our council, Mr. Fink. All right, first up on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. And I'm gonna pass the copy that you guys can look at that. No,
I already.
Jonathan, have you seen the agenda? Okay,
Got it right here.
all right.
Thank you so much, Christy. Thank you for sure. No problem.
Okay, so y'all can see our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, may
Yes,
I noticed that your agenda has approval of the January 10th minutes, which I think you did at the January 17th.
so it should be the 17th. Thank you. We need to change that. Anything else? All right, how about a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right, and
Second.
all those in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up, approval of the minutes of the January 17th meeting, not the January 10th meeting. And we thank our minute person who we arm twisted into that job, because I think those minutes look great.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any corrections? Any comments? Okay, we have a motion to approve. For a second,
A second.
okay, discussion. No discussion. Let's go ahead and vote to approve the minutes of the January 17th meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we actually have a moving right along. Okay, communications to the Compensation Commission. I was told that this refers to outside communications coming in, not ones here in the township. So we don't have any additional communications from outside outside of the township management here. So nothing to discuss on that. Next up, though, is our public comment options. And first, we open it up to anybody present, nobody in the audience. So Aurora, is there anybody online that?
I'm gonna just make a comment here.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Not an audience. On the other side of this table, have made this point many times. There are constituents and or residents. Because the
Clarify.
audience indicates something that I think a number of us were uncomfortable with. And so I'd be hypocritical not to make the point when I'm on this side of the table, nothing personal, but audience is beneath the table. diminutive.
Okay, so I should use actual
Residents.
residents.
That's who we serve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Residents in attendance.
Fine.
Okay, no, that's a
Apologize
great
for
point.
the.
No,
line
that's
correction,
good.
but I-
Jonathan, I rely on you to bring up stuff like that.
No,
I'm
I've
the
just,
weenie
I've been
here,
such an
so.
advocate of
Yeah.
that from the beginning.
But
I do.
May I remind you all, though, that the Open Meetings Act allows anyone, whether they fit constituent or resident, to offer a public comment at a public meeting.
Public then, whatever. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
care. I just audiences in particular with bothers me. And I know others as well. So.
We could add residents and could we suggest a second phrase with
think
residents?
The public is.
Yeah.
is
The public.
members of the public.
Because we do have guests that make presentations at different
Yeah.
things. So I think it's a great idea to say residents.
Thank you.
And
And I
guests.
appreciate the support.
Yeah.
All right. So back to Aurora, do we have anybody with a hand raised from the vast
We do.
viewing audience?
Go ahead, Rob.
Rob Pattinson.
Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident, member of the public, otherwise known troublemaker. Just FYI for this meeting, the agenda packet only has placeholder pages for the items to be discussed tonight. There were, it looks like there were to be documents associated with those items on the agenda. So after the meeting, could you please upload those, especially the things you had handouts today? And that way the public can follow along when you are discussing items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And I'll make sure that gets done.
Happy to
Okay,
help.
beg your pardon.
Happy to help collect and publish.
Yeah. Anybody else that has a hand raised?
So we have no one else.
Okay. All right, so then let's start then with our unfinished business. And the first item is the survey data, and Aurora provided this to us via email. We have a Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully you guys have seen it. Great, yeah, let's definitely ask you to pass those out.
Right? This one is in color.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm set, so. So, first I want to make a note or a question, Jonathan. I think you had some additional insights or, oh yeah, you had the graphics.
I just threw it into Tableau to kind of get a spread, visual spread. That was that thing I sent out.
Okay, and is that something you can put up on a screen or?
Just signing into the network for the first time. I think I'm in. Yeah, I do. Let me sign into the meeting and I will share my screen.
Okay. This is part of the process that I have no background with, so it's great that. Beg your pardon?
Don't look at me.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, Jonathan has been to many township meetings over the last, 4 years maybe, so.
Are we gonna review separately or do
Voting in
Aurora's
progress.
data first or
Yeah, let's talk about Aurora's data first.
since we have it handy?
Well, I think
Oh, okay.
he has a display of this data is my understanding.
Okay,
Um,
I'll hold my questions.
Yeah, so, and it might, sometimes the graphic,
Can you allow me to present? I just signed.
They need to.
You know what I'm saying? It's not the best, but it's easy to say. Once you sign in, you're gonna have the time.
Multiple. You see if you can do it now, John.
I do not have a share. Now, I was unmuted, but I don't have a share button.
So maybe you have to plug in as a panelist to. Yeah,
Is there a different one?
I'm outside of my knowledge of Zoom at this moment, so. While he's looking at that, maybe the four of us can touch on some stuff, and I'm thinking you
raising a
have.
hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that how we do it? Raising a hand? Yeah, I have a question that is about general information regarding the spreadsheet. And I'll direct it to, since Aurora's working and I'm gonna direct it to gentleman Fink, if he can answer for me. I am from a business background where it's apples to apples when we're comparing. So in other words, if one hospital has got a description of an occupation that's happening, and I'm looking for doing salaries, and I'm looking at another hospital with the same clarification of classification. So I'm a little confused, and if somebody could just give me a little help on this. I went back and tried to find it in some of the info we've received. When we're looking at this Excel spreadsheet, I'm confused why we would be comparing not apples to apples. In other words, I expected all the info that would come back would be townships, not charter townships, not cities, not villages. So this confused me just a bit. And so I'm just wondering if somebody could help me understand if we don't do it by, and granted, I understand that there could be different sized townships, but I know there's real differences in the rules for city versus a village versus a charter versus, you know, so can someone just help me understand? Do we not use that as our search engine? Are we looking at something more in the sense of population or the, you know, taxable value here or our general fund? I just would appreciate if somebody could give me some input on that, whether it's Jim or Rory. I'll take it from anybody,
I'll,
if you understand my question.
yeah,
I share it.
beg your pardon?
I share it.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and that's essentially part of the challenge is that there isn't a single good ruler.
Okay,
We don't have data
okay,
of a similar size township, not charter township, not municipal, not city. And each of these different townships are set up a little bit differently.
okay,
So and that's really the challenge. I mean, we have to start somewhere.
right.
And so
So do we choose when we as a novice, as I as a novice, look at this information, which is great information. And I'm surmising that the highlighted is to give us the closest proximity in as many different categories, is how I'm seeing it here, whether it's population, taxable value, you know, trying to sort that through. Is there a primary? And again, I'm trying to follow what the rules are. Is there or is this just,
It might be a little fuzzy, I think. And
okay,
I think we need to blur our eyes a little bit, or
Okay.
just we're not gonna be able to make a nice clean box.
okay, so we don't do
with
it
the
that way.
data that we have.
Okay, so, and is there one of the areas that's any more important than the other? When you look at the different, you know, whether it's the base pays or we're looking at the information up top. How is what is everyone else feeling about this? So that I might be on the same path that everyone else is.
well, a couple of things, obviously, full-time, part-time is one. The specific responsibilities and whether there are other staff to handle responsibilities. Like in our case, we have a treasurer and a deputy treasurer. I think the statute requires a deputy treasurer, right? That the treasurer picks. So our treasurer doesn't do everything himself, but in a
Right.
smaller township, they don't have that ability.
Right.
So the challenge that we've had before is that none of these comparisons are really exact. we
Okay.
have to start with, some of the limitations.
Yep.
One of them is a full-time, part-time. One of them is additional staff to get the job done. The third would be the actual responsibilities that we have, that those positions have in our township. And it isn't always clear how that measures up to other townships. But that's kind of the challenge. Otherwise, hey, if it was just hospital compensation, it'd be a piece of cake. We'd be.
Well, I mean, so I'm just, that helps a lot. I appreciate that, because I mean, I can certainly, decipher
Yeah.
down here what we have. I just was wondering how important it was, total revenues. How important is it that we're looking, are those the key things? Because you're right, it is fuzzy. I'll agree, it's real fuzzy, but I was just trying to make sure that I, as a new person to this committee, was following the right protocol.
Yeah, we really don't, other than those kind of 4 points that you saw, there's no formal protocol, no
Okay.
rules on this.
Okay.
But those are, and part of that too is that we have a pretty affluent community, which you see from the tax incomes.
Mhm.
But we also have a desirable community to live in, being this close to, Ann Arbor and stuff. And you could argue that's similar to a lakefront community that's desirable because of the lake or whatever. But that impacts how desirable, say, a clerk position here is versus a, clerk position in a, I don't know if we have any ugly industrial, communities that
Okay.
we're comparing with, but all those things you can argue have an influence
Okay.
in the desirability of that position, but
Okay. Just trying to get a little better understanding of it.
and Jeff, you've been awful quiet here. I want to give you a chance to chime in if you have anything.
Oh, I have several comments, but I thought I would introduce them as we sort of looked over the 4 factors and discussed them.
Okay,
So
All right.
at the moment, I'm not disagreeing with anything being said.
Okay.
I love the data. I wish there were closer comparisons, but sometimes you just can't get there. So we do the best of what we got, and it's a data point.
yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I would argue another data point is, another part of this is that a lot of the people like our treasurer, our trustees, are not here as a full-time,
Correct.
activity. And there's always a question of whether you even need to pay trustees, right? Because they're local residents and they want to have input in the decision-making and, but obviously our township has made those determinations to compensate. There was a major, and we'll see this with the history, there's a major increment in that compensation here in the last 4 years.
Correct.
In part because of that, desire to have enough qualified people as candidates that you can actually have elections have some meaning. So,
Yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion on the June 16th of 2023 about this exact
Oh, okay.
situation about, I don't know if anybody went back and looked at, I've been going back and looking at the videos.
why don't you clarify for anybody that might be watching?
So I've gone back and been just recently, I apologize, reviewing the previous commission board that was in session in June and early July in 2023. And it's on YouTube and whatnot. It was extremely helpful because I got to see how they brought their choices and thoughts together. I heard input of what some people thought about a trustee's position and others. It was extremely enlightening to me and gave me more basis. And, there's people that think a trustee should be having just, working on a board for a school or something, and it's a voluntary thing you do because it's the goodness of your heart. And other people say, I'm qualified, I need to pay, and I need it appropriate in this. I mean, it was very interesting to hear the different concepts and to see how they went through, and also talked about the lack of perhaps, and that's why one of the reasons I was one of the ones that really wanted to see the pay schedule increase over a bigger time frame, just to be able to look at a small bit of data and say, okay, what have we done since 2016? What have we done in a 10-year frame, and how have we changed? Is that because of size? Is that so many of these meetings that were done for the 2023 were enlightening to me about information I wish I had really wish I had seen them earlier in the process of this. So they're, if you're looking for something, it's really good to take the time to watch.
And the $64,000 question is, if you'd seen that ahead of time, would you still want to be a commissioner?
You know, the answer to that would be yes, because I'm the type of person, I think somebody knows this. I don't like walking into something unprepared. And I do feel that I came into this a bit unprepared, and it's a little tough,
Well, I
so.
want to do a hat tip to our earlier caller, Rob Pattinson, who has single-handedly collected, taped every single
Yes.
meeting for the last 5 years and put it on
Yep.
YouTube.
It's
For anyone
great.
to review, and so
He
that's.
deserves,
you had-
and
that's
he
it.
is, yeah, he's great, and that is where I was using, it was the easiest way to find the information and extremely helpful, so.
I
Hats
had
off to
taken
Rob.
from that video as well. And that is the full-time, well, full/part-time supervisor, clerk, treasurer. Somebody asked the question, it might even have been you, John. How much of a role did salary play in your decision to run for this office? And all of them said it didn't. Now, if we had been severely undercutting them, they might have had a different answer, but the point is they weren't in it looking for the big payout. They said their primary focus was public service. And so I think as long as we keep the salaries competitive and reasonable, I don't think we'll have trouble. That's my opinion, taking that away.
Well, I agree with that, and I think in my mind, I'm not so concerned with the trustees that are elected and, well, but the clerk who has a long list of job duties and the treasurer are the two that I'm more concerned about, is making sure they're being compensated because they have big jobs and
I need some clarity on that. You left the supervisor.
Correct.
oh, as supervisor, who's
Oh, okay.
part-time.
All right. so the-
Supervisor,
Yeah,
the clerk and the treasurer.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, enough discussion. Should we get back to the spreadsheet?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
kind of, all right. Anybody have any great insights there on how we stack up there with,
Well,
the other?
I can bring up that picture if that helps.
Yeah, yeah. And can you? Oh, okay.
Now, this is just it's hard to see from back here, but these are the 4 positions, the numbers we got, just put into a box and whiskers kind of graph to give us a feel of what the range is, where we're starting. So
Okay,
I haven't filtered out half-time, part-time. There might be a couple of little filters here, but for the most part, and if you're asking where's Scio Township, well, there we are with yellow. Well, it didn't work. But we're this yellow spot here.
Okay.
When it comes to treasurer, we're here. When it comes to supervisor, we're down here. Again, it's a half-time position. I haven't filtered that. So if we really wanted to play with the numbers, I could just double the salary of, not for the purpose of saying, let's make these all full-time jobs, but just double the salary of half-time people. So analytically, we can see where they fall. I haven't done that. And then again, when we come up to the clerk, then, we see where we fall in the current range.
okay.
But that hasn't been normalized for population, or anything. It's just the raw
Nope.
numbers,
This is
right?
just the raw data.
Yeah.
And one other change I made when there was a range, like in the city of Chelsea, we had a 92 to 110. I just put in 110. Because this didn't really support ranges. It was a quick visualization.
So wait a second. The range, the Chelsea data you're referring to, where am I?
Look under
Under-
elected official clerk, city of
Clerk.
Oh,
Chelsea.
okay,
You see how there's a range there?
I got it.
I just
You
put in
know.
110 to
Yeah.
keep the math simple.
Okay,
There's some, like City of Chelsea had $400 per meeting for supervisor, actually we call it the mayor. In that case, I did not like figure out how many meetings they have
Yeah.
per year and then multiply it by 400. I haven't done anything like that.
Okay, so this set of data is what the municipalities we have from Aurora there, is that 10 of them?
6, 10, yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like having the graphical for reference, obviously there a lot.
There's a lot more data here. We
Not
can
involved, yeah.
play into this, but again, it's determined by what do we think as a group is gonna be important in helping us
Yeah,
zero in on the numbers that we.
okay.
Since there's reference on the chart, regarding other is it okay if I,
Yes,
since there's data in here regarding other areas and talking about, call them stipends per meeting, whatever. It seemed to be that, and I'm just trying to decipher this a bit and at least throw this out there, that the previous, compensation committee, there was a great deal of discussion about meetings and talking about other areas and whatnot. We're not looking at that right now. Is that correct? We're simply looking at the annual pay.
when you say meetings, you mean
The extra
compensation
meetings,
per,
yes,
yeah,
that we,
so we're not
we're
looking,
not looking at those because the data here shows those things, but that's not those are separate numbers and we're not taking that in. We're just looking at the basic pays at this
Yes.
point, correct?
yes,
Yes.
The distinction is that your job is to determine salaries,
Not-
which
Yep.
are the set amount. And the per meeting, per diem, whatever you want to call it,
Somewhere else.
is other compensation that is not your responsibility or
Thank
authority.
you. I just want to make sure that that's what I was.
So I have seen compensation commissions say, we recommend this salary we determine this salary, which goes through that, is adopted unless rejected by the supermajority, and we recommend this per meeting, but that is up to the board to determine, vote on that as a majority thing. So you can make a recommendation if you wanted, just like they've asked you to consider other commissions and committees, but
We're looking at
you
base
don't
pay right now.
determine a per meeting, you only determine the salary.
Base pay. Correct. Okay, thank you.
Just my preliminary thoughts looking at this is the salaries don't mean a lot without really adjusting for population and responsibilities. If you do that, and I just did the very quick back of the envelope calculations, the salaries we're paying right now are in the higher end. If you look simply at proportion of population. So
so give us an example,
sure. So for example, comparable in population, we have Hamburg Township and Highland Charter Township.
okay,
Clerk salary, 99,000 for us, 54,000 and 88,000 on those two that are comparable in population.
no, wait. Hamburg,
Yeah.
I'm seeing 84 on Hamburg.
Yes, I'm sorry, 84 and 88.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Okay.
Yep, yep, sorry. I was looking at Huron Township down there, it's
Okay.
37.
yeah, so,
So, just based on that, Pittsfield Township, the salaries are higher, but they have more than double our population.
yeah,
Good.
So off the top of my head here, it seems like we are already in the upper range. Now, based on other factors, it could well be appropriate. I'm just saying, I don't think anybody is underpaid, is what I'm saying.
okay. Well, now, when you say that, did you look at the same comparison for the other positions?
Yeah, I'm looking
Okay.
across the board here and
All right.
taking into account the supervisor is part-time and not full-time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any glaring injustices here in terms of salary.
But we don't know what the job description is for each of these other townships.
Right.
Just looking at this,
Yeah, you, given the data we have.
given that there are other data points to take into consideration for sure.
And I just quickly threw in a full-time, part-time filter, and the graph now reflects just full-time position. So you'll see that the trustees dropped off the picture because there's no full-time trustees.
What, is supervisor the middle?
Yep, clerk,
Okay.
supervisor, treasurer is the order of the three. Yeah.
Okay, and where, since our supervisor position is.
You won't see our supervisor in here because it's
Okay.
part-time.
All right, right.
But if we wanted to get a number based on the full-time ones and then divide it in half for part-time, then
Yeah.
that would be one way of looking.
Okay,
If you were to double the supervisor's current salary, where would that fall in the box plot there?
I can update the data, but that'll just.
I just, where does 88,000 fit in there? I can look on my laptop right here,
Well, 84 is Hamburg, that's right there. and
Okay.
This one's 92, so somewhere in between.
somewhere in between those, yeah.
Definitely in the lower quadrant.
Okay.
I think this is a 1.5 sigma deviation for each side. So like, for example, this is way out of whack. We should give Huron Township a call.
well,
Right, so they have, sure. But that's just, I wanted to update everyone that now reflects full-time only.
good data, good discussion. Do you have, any other, graphic, displays that you want to share with us of the,
Yeah, no, I
Data?
was just, I was
Okay.
more like, hey, ask questions and I'll see if I can answer
Okay.
in the data. So the
Yeah.
full-time thing came up, so but we can definitely add.
Yeah. I think one of the, one of the critical factors is the, having other staff available to do some of the work and, you know, we've had difficulties getting what, I guess, a manager here and the background for a manager versus administrator. Oh.
He just took a big breath.
You remember, just.
Oh, I remember.
Okay. Review for us, because wasn't that part of the whole thing with making the supervisor position full-time for a while? Because we were lacking the.
So,
Okay.
what we heard at the first compensation commission from both Spalding Clark, who was a former supervisor and manager combined, and from former Commissioner Knowles, whose husband was a supervisor who received additional pay during the period of vacancy when Bryce Kelly was ill and then retired, was that both of the two immediate past supervisors before Supervisor Hathaway considered the supervisor role to be a part-time position, and that the extra pay they received was because they were doing manager duties as well in the absence of a manager.
I see, okay.
And so the previous compensation commissions considered the supervisor role as a part-time or half-time position and adjusted the salary to reflect that determination in their judgment.
Okay.
You're not bound by anything except what the five of you decide, of
Yeah.
course.
I'm sorry, you said this committee, the commission
Yes,
committee made that recommendation about the hours of full-time to part-time about the supervisor, not the board of trustees?
well,
How did that, I wasn't
the-
quite get it.
the determination of the compensation commission was based in part, I believe, based on what I heard at the meetings, that they considered the supervisor job to not be a full-time job.
Okay,
And we've had managers do we have a manager now or is that
We
in
do not
process?
have a manager now. There is Ms. Northrop could tell you better, but there's a process ongoing, but they're not at the point of interviewing managers yet.
And
Responsibilities are
Or
delegated.
manager candidates, I should say.
Is it manager, or I heard operations director, I've heard a different,
Yeah.
couple of different titles, and that gives me concern for how we look, and specifically look at the supervisor
I
position.
agree.
Because it's unclear to me at this time, and I've been watching their meetings, it's still unclear to me exactly what the duties of that position will be. And if they overlap with the supervisor, then maybe, part-time does make sense. But if they don't, and the supervisor, we've grown to the supervisors, that version, I think we need to consider that as well, especially since the other two full-time positions, the treasurer and the clerk have, helpers, assistants.
deputies, yeah.
Deputies.
Deputies, I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that process, so and it's tough because it feels a little slippery and a little bit soft as to what those responsibilities are at this time. So I don't know if you could advise us on which way to lean on this.
That wouldn't be legal advice, Commissioner. You know I'm a smart aleck, right?
Please be as
You've heard
smart
it.
and
So-
alecky as you can.
When Commissioner Klubeck was asking her questions about comparing apples to apples and apples to oranges and trying to figure all this out, which is essentially the same discussion you're having now. The thought that popped into my head is that there is a 5-person panel who ultimately determines all of those things. That group is called the Scio Township Compensation Commission. And
Okay.
the answer to her questions and to yours lay at the 10 feet around this table, excluding mine.
There is an agenda item which states
Well said.
we're going to discuss any additional information or resources that we need to make our decision. So I would
Also-
suggest that one thing we can ask for is more information on what a new manager's duties will be and compare them with the ones that have been in the past, and that will help us.
As long as you're done in the next, I believe it's
2.5
two and a half weeks.
Can I provide a little information on that position?
Absolutely.
So, it is Director of Operations, a proposed title for the February 11 Board of Trustees regular meeting. There is a proposed job description that the board will be voting on. And then once once they decide from that point, then I would be able to move forward with recruiting, et cetera.
At what point can we have that job description to see?
Wednesday, once they.
Once they- okay,
Yeah,
once-
once
okay.
they make the motion and everyone votes, I could send that through email.
Will it not be part of the February 11th agenda packet?
It is part of the agenda packet.
There you go.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Who does that position report to?
The board of trustees.
Okay, so they don't actually report to the supervisor, but they report to the board of trustees. Okay. All right. Back to the kind of the statutorial duties of the township officials. We do have the 2 pages, I think from our initial meeting that I think is from the Michigan Township website on the various, responsibilities of those positions in terms of the township rules, if you will. And so that also, do you guys remember seeing this? Because that was part of what I sent you when you had arm twisted into this. So that's a reference point for us also in looking at that and thinking in terms of the supervisor and as well as the other positions and their deputies and their assistants or whatever, so,
Now,
okay.
that is the list of statutory duties. I found it enlightening, again, looking at the videos from 2023. That just because those duties are listed there does not mean the person in that spot is actually doing them all. Supervisor at the time was asked about the board of review, right? And
That's a
he
great
said,
point.
well, actually, I've delegated that. Okay, so my question is, do we want to invite the current supervisor, clerk, and treasurer to speak to their list of statutory duties so we could ask questions about them like we did 2 years ago?
I was just going to comment the same thing because I was confused by the fact that in the 2023 meetings that there was communication sent out to request descriptions of their duties from the actual officials. And some responded, some didn't. And so there was a communication that went on, basically what you're saying, Jeff.
Yes.
And a communication went on. And I didn't think that that was how we were supposed to handle this, to speak with, maybe I missed
I
that
mean
incorrectly.
deliberation or communication, I'm,
It was the way it was explained in the meeting, and you would have been there. Evidently, a request was sent to receive information on their actual, like what you're speaking, both of you are speaking of, the actual, what is listed as your duty, what do you actually do, what you do beyond what you were originally is listed here. There was communication done between the actual people in the position. And about 50-50 responded. They were gonna try and reach out for more. This was in the second meeting, I think it was. And I didn't realize that we could have that kind of communication going on, because I personally do have questions about regarding a director of operations versus a manager versus a supervisor. It's like we've got a three-way circle going on. I didn't think that was actually part of our description. So
Apparently it can be. We can
it
certainly
sounds like
ask.
after I saw that we
We can
could
invite them, hey, would
Mhm.
you mind coming to the meeting and spending 15 minutes
each one get to
answering
present.
questions and just briefly outlining what
Yeah.
you're doing? I think it would be enlightening, given that there may be some confusion
Mhm.
over the duties of the supervisor versus an incoming director of operations, that we could ask the supervisor to clarify what she believes her role will be. If that's going to change at all. Will she be delegating some of her responsibilities that she currently has to the director of operations, or vice versa, or no change? It would just be good to hear that.
And we might have to be a little careful because, as I'm sure Aurora can help us understand, there's been a delegation of when our manager left in September, the board all divvied up responsibility. So we might have to be clear on how we are asking that question, because they're all in temporary areas right now, which might make it a little bit difficult, but I
If
agree.
you ask them on their duties today, it could reflect the fact that they are covering some.
They're covering, they're all taking,
They were to the, credit of the organization, they spread those duties out
Right.
appropriately.
yeah.
Well, but they are still out there.
And it sounds as if, from what I heard at the last meeting, that those additional responsibilities could very much be going on for up to a year before someone's recruited to take a position. So we just would need to keep that in mind, that we're looking at not the temporary assignment, but the existing classifications.
Statutories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aurora, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, other than what the commissioner is saying, that
Okay.
yes, there are duties that have been by resolution divided up.
Okay.
So there have been
Changes.
resolutions since then.
Yes.
So it is,
It's confusing right now.
it has changed,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so it sounds like somebody might want to make a motion to ask, do you think we need a motion to ask the, full-time, people to come in and talk to us
I
about
don't think
yours?
it's necessary, and I don't think it's precluded. You.
Okay,
Good.
all right, so are we all in agreement that we should, just ask the, clerk treasurer and supervisor to come in, join us in our next meeting for 15 minutes and review. Jonathan, you are thinking about something
Yeah,
there.
no, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. I think we should do that. All right.
Can we get, or is it in here what their current job description is?
Yeah.
Because like, the clerk's duties are well written and we got that, but not so much for the supervisor
We have,
to compare, like, oh, now you're doing this or you're not doing this.
If Renee
I
has
can
something.
I'll find it for you.
But I don't think the supervisor had much written.
I'll have to look for it, but I'll
Yeah.
find it for you. I have it, or it was given to us in the early packet. The resolutions were done. I'll find it. We don't have to hold each other.
All right, so that'll be a party. I do think that'll be helpful. All right, other thoughts on the survey data? Bring it now.
I have one question. Did this come from the MTA database? Or
The.
the MTA
spreadsheet,
website has
Yeah.
a sign on. I don't know if we.
It came from,
Yeah, I didn't see a source on this.
no, I apologize.
Can anyone
It
look at the
came-
MTA or you have to have a login?
I think you have to have a login. That's why I'm asking because.
Sound like a stinking engineer.
I'm sorry. I just happened to.
Not nearly as long as 83, sounds like.
I was graduating high school.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So. Survey data, we don't have any additional questions about the survey data other than can we get more? But I don't know, as I look at the number of dimensions involved here, some of these things like. What do you do is not gonna be so consistent across jobs, across townships.
Yeah,
That we're gonna need that. I don't know how helpful putting time into that's gonna be. Maybe in a major way, but like.
Yeah,
What are you doing now versus what are you gonna be doing in 8 months when we hire? It seems to get really messy and difficult to. focus on. I'd like to look at the salaries and
okay.
figure out from there.
Well, hopefully we can do both, but, Jean, did you have something? you
well,
want-
I was just gonna say, when we got this information about the other townships, I basically just picked the ones that had populations that were close. Hamburg Township, of course, is not the same as living in Scio Township. But it seemed like it was fairly close and they, just off the top of my head, have a nice area to live. They're close to everything, a lot of lakes out there.
A lot of lakes, yeah.
So I was comparing mostly to Hamburg Township and then to Southfield, but I know nothing about Oakland.
So Southfield is, yeah, I mean, it's developed.
Very busy,
Big,
yeah.
big city. feel,
Yeah.
Did you have any specific, thoughts on Hamburg versus Scio and, how we stack up or?
I think that's a very comparable. I was actually at a Hamburg Township meeting yesterday to discuss the dam, because I have a cottage on Portage.
Oh, okay.
And very comparable, I would say, and the, I'll say, affluence out there.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a big spread out there.
There's a
Yeah.
big spread, yes, but I'm sure that there's a spread here.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Maybe not as big a spread as Livingston County.
I am going to take back my comment earlier about Southfield because this is Southfield Township.
Okay,
It's a much smaller area that includes Beverly Hills, Bingham Farms. So I don't know about size. It's between Inkster and Greenfield, 12 and 14. So it's in a pretty affluent area and it's not as much, it's more of a suburb of Southfield itself, so correct, so.
Before we leave survey data, may I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
I think it's great. We're gonna try and have our elected officials come and give us some information, take a couple questions. I just wonder if we're not taking the time to also give the trustees that opportunity. I think there's a great deal of, and I see exactly where we are with their payroll. It's not about that. It's about, are we not giving someone that we're evaluating, are we not giving them the opportunity to explain that perhaps what we all might assume is a trustee position? There's been so much talk about it. They're on so many different committees and they're expected to prepare. Do we need to, we don't have any need to speak to them as we're speaking to the other three officials? Does anybody have any input on that?
I don't see it as nearly as important,
Okay.
I'd say.
Okay,
If we had
More
unlimited time and resources,
Got it.
I'd absolutely be interested, but.
and maybe we just need to be prepared. There might be some pushback because of that, but that's how life is. But I just wanted to make sure we were all
Think
in
they're gonna
agreement.
fire us? Yeah.
No, but they can say a lot of bad things. I just wanted to make sure we were clear that we were okay with just moving on with the elected officials right now. Everybody
Well,
agrees?
trustees are elected too.
I said that wrong. Yes. Sorry, I apologize the way I phrased that.
You gotta be careful, because
Not
I
elected.
was thinking full-time, it's like,
There's
no,
a
our supervisors are full-time.
There was a
It's like,
different word I
Yeah,
was trying
so-
to use. Yes, I think you understood my point though.
To your point.
Yes, thank you.
Looking at the numbers, there's two big outliers, but for the
Yeah.
most part, all of the data points to townships making between 6 and 10.
Yeah. So I agree with you on that. I just wanted to make sure we all sort of saw that as not the bigger possibly thing we're looking at in a small time frame. And also the fact that the size, like you say, when we're looking the other places, it's just always good to make sure we're all on the same page. So I'm happy to agree with that. I just want to make sure we all felt the same way at this
Yeah,
point.
I don't think you'll find any trustees saying I ran for the money.
Yeah. Well, there have been people that say no trustee would do this job without being paid. It's on videos. I can give you the
Yeah,
time to go back and look at it. But so I just want to make sure we're all, good on this. And I think that the numbers speak very well for where we are. It is a giving position. It takes heart
Yeah.
and,
Here's the trustee data right here, and this is us right here in the yellow.
Yep.
There are a couple of outliers, like I said, but for the most part, Scio is far ahead of all the other townships. So I don't think there's an equity issue.
I'll agree with you. I was
secondary-
hoping we would at least have that on the record that we
Okay.
felt comfortable with that. So thank you.
Do you have a comment? Okay, Jean.
I was just thinking that, looking back, the clerk and the treasurer got a bump in their salary a few years ago to make them equitable, but so in my mind, I'm thinking we gotta figure out a cost of living. In my work life, we didn't get big bumps or get big raises, things like that, but we did get cost of living. And that's what I'm looking at, is what should we be bumping their salary for the cost of living?
Well, and we talked, I think, in the
Yes.
previous meeting about the consumer price index.
Yes,
And so I think that discussion will come. But I think,
okay,
I think at this point, my vision is we're gathering more outside data to bring in. I think the cost of living should be pretty straightforward in comparison to
but are
the.
we gathering all this to see if we need to give them a bigger bump again? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm not gonna.
Or
no.
Cutting their, yeah. Okay.
All right, well, let's move on and see if we can review our pay summary for the last 9 years, so I think Aurora has for us.
I do, and I am having problems with printing it, so I am going to try again. And I will be right back.
Okay,
All right, taking this in case I have to plug in.
all right. Well, I guess we won't look at that right away.
I'm thinking about what you just said, and I think that does make sense. To a little, I mean, you're right, we have to go through the process, but in those two situations, work that was done and bump that was given may make our task more, at least for those two roles, focused on, cost of living would be. I mean, we certainly need to make sure that we're in range and all, but I think the cost of living would be the bigger part of any salary adjustment. You're right, I mean, there was just a big bump.
I have the same feeling.
So do I. And actually, would that also be the bump where we are with the trustees? Because that was changed in the recent years
Yeah, it was changed substantially.
sizably. So I was
Yeah.
just making sure, that's what I saw. And maybe what Aurora gives us will help us
Yeah.
do that. And that might make this whole thing a lot easier this year.
Yeah,
At
now,
least this year.
as you're looking at me for agreement, I'm trying to step back and not focus on our previous years and.
No,
look at-
I'm
so-
used doing it for data driven.
Yeah,
That's the only thing
okay.
I'm doing it on is, and I only reference that because I know you've been on the board. You're the veteran here.
Yeah.
But it helps to go back and see where there were some major
Yeah.
changes happened. We weren't in what was probably a fair environment. We got to a better place. And I think, Jonathan, your comment is, we might be making more than we have to really be
Well, it
doing
wasn't
at this
my
particular
intent. I
time.
was just rephrasing.
Yeah, no, I
Sorry.
think it's true,
Yeah.
that I think we're all kind of on the same page a lot about
Yeah.
this.
So I would kind of agree with that, but I'm not.
Kind of, we'll take that.
You're not there yet.
Not there yet, okay.
That's fair.
And this isn't supposed to be a 6 or 8 month process. So
Right,
in
right.
theory, I'm sure in
Yes.
the future, some of these commissions will be a one meeting decision-making process but we're not quite there yet in our
Yeah.
activity. So the one, I guess part of this, what I was looking for will come from the pay summary, because I'm still curious in terms of the interaction between the manager. Mr. Fink, can you explain what difference is between an administrator and a manager? Because wasn't David Rowley an administrator? Or are they the same? Or do you hate me for asking that question? As he crosses his arms, yeah,
I mean,
Yes,
get him over here.
yes to which,
all of them.
Oh, okay.
Well, to answer your first one, not necessarily, the term manager appears in the statute, says a township can employ a manager or other persons.
Okay.
It's not a direct quote. And the township ordinances reference a manager. When Mr. Rowley was hired, it was the sense of the board that they were looking for something a little different than a manager as necessarily the CEO, but more of the quarterback working in conjunction with the board. And so
okay,
they use the title administrator. I think most of that, including his operations director, is, I don't want to say it's a distinction without a difference,
okay,
but each of those roles is going to be kind of the chief employee of the township, and then the board will authorize whatever
That's-
duties and
yeah, okay.
responsibility and authority that it wants to. There's, the board certainly has a lot of discretion in forming that job description.
all right, and just recently, then we had Joyce was a manager then?
I think she was manager, yes,
Okay.
was her title.
Okay. Okay. Are they looking for a similar type of person now as Joyce, similar pay range and such?
The short answer is I don't
Oh,
know.
okay,
The longer answer is if I did know, I'm not sure I would be in a
Okay.
position to report on.
all right, well, Renee, you look like you have the answer to that question, and then maybe I should have.
Thanks. Thank you. Great job. I think in getting clarification on that, the previous managers meeting is very helpful because there was a lot of discussion on if it should be a manager versus director of operations, as well as discussion about the pay scale. It also infers about the process of who is answering to whom and what the duties would be. So you could just review the minutes of that last managers meeting. It was or watch the video, one or the other. It gives huge breakdown to the discussion of that, and
Okay,
it still is a bit, from what I'm feeling from the committee that's working on it, and basically it's the board, so it's really kind of funny. But is that there's still not a totally joint agreement on it, that it's still being debated.
okay,
So we might be a little like, not have an answer until maybe February 11th, then there'll be clarification.
okay,
So, but the prior meeting, they talked all about those details. So
Okay.
they're still not, they're not in. Did
All right.
anybody else do that meeting? Jonathan, were you on that? Yeah,
I missed the last one.
yeah, and it gave quite a bit of information about going on of manager, director of operations, pay scales. Who's doing what, who's answering to whom.
I'll go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I did miss it because of.
Yeah, it was, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
okay, all right, so right away. I'm wondering about this because I thought our numbers showed the trustee compensation.
This only goes up, the trustee, I noticed that too, trustees come up to 10, but this last date on here is in. Like,
It's a data point behind.
Yes, and I can provide that as of April 1st of 2024. I can provide those salaries.
Those numbers
Okay.
are right there. We've got them right in the spreadsheet.
Yes,
Treasurer
They
is
are.
90,000, clerk is 99. Trustee is 10,
Up here.
supervisor is 44.
Got it. So he's going back to the.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good.
Supervisor salary looks like an EKG.
Yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
That one jump to 75, that was because of the additional stipend,
It was full-time, the position went full-time.
Yeah, I think that's the second.
2019,
Yeah, was that Spalding? Not Spalding,
Jim Knowles.
Knowles. And Jim go full-time? I don't remember the.
And then another time, the same was for 2021, is that correct?
Yeah, 2021 was
Category.
Supervisor Hathaway
Right, for a short amount of time.
then they hired, and then they hired,
Well,
Administrator.
salary jumped in early 2021, and then the compensation committee met and adjusted.
Okay.
that's true.
Well. The board determined it was part-time. We recommended. There was a part-time position in the board.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I mean, yes, ultimately the board votes on this, but we recommend it.
All right, so. So let's go ahead and kind of start, we actually already started a little bit with the treasurer, I'm sorry, the trustee position. And that incremented up to 10,000 here recently. As you can see, that wasn't a huge jump compared to previous history. Going from the bottom up, so trustee, the next up is a supervisor. And we're at 44 on that, and we just were discussing some of the history there and what happened, the swing in between part-time and full-time. The 75,000 being not only the position itself, but additional duties.
At the time, yeah.
Delegated by the board of trustees. And then the treasurer, you can see that stayed flat for a long period of time. And then that had a pretty significant jump here with our current compensation of $90,000. I'm sorry, did I miss something? Yeah, so up to 90,000, that was a pretty steep. But as people have mentioned, part of that was because it had been at the same level with the same treasurer for a long period of time. And we had kind of determined that we needed more up-to-date skill set, and whoever was going to be taking that taking over on that role. And based on all the kind of factors we've already discussed at this meeting, the previous commission thought we needed to have a significantly higher compensation level on that. And then our clerk. And the clerk jumped to the 84,000. That was when our current clerk was hired in with what would you call that? There were, competing prospects for clerk, but that was a negotiated price in our marketplace. And then there was some argument in the or debate following that kind of focused, I think, on more on personalities in our current clerk. And remember, the job of the compensation commission is not to focus on whether the individual person is doing what they should be one way or another. It's to focus on the value associated with that position in our township. And so that's why that increment jumped, like I say, the negotiation and the new clerk, and then it kind of stagnated there, and then why is gone to our current level of 99.4. Everybody pretty much agree with that history?
It's very helpful. Thank you.
People, yeah. Yeah, and I would argue with this graphic information, it kind of goes along with what three of you were suggesting about 20 minutes ago, is that maybe the cost of living in our for a couple of these positions is a significant focus for us. Any other thoughts on the
Just one data point, reading back to the 2023 meetings. Apparently, the clerk requested a particular salary. So she suggested this is how much she wanted to be paid. I believe the number was 96,000. So they gave her actually a little bit more than that. I wasn't aware that we were polling or that they had suggested, they could suggest. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I believe that there was a COLA in between the time they increased her salary. The 99, I think that increase wasn't because she asked for this, and they gave her more. I may be wrong, but I do know that the entire staff got a COLA this last. I remember Joyce and others got it since the last.
See, the employees did, you mean?
yeah, I don't know that these positions.
Oh, they don't get,
Not on the
that's
staff.
our job. Oh, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We don't do it, they don't get it.
All right, good.
And so, yeah, so I think I
So
would agree.
she requested
Yeah.
the salary, this commission in 2023 decided that was an appropriate range. And then they settled on a little bit more. Interesting.
And in response to the one of the discussion topics in that term back in 2023 was how our residents, our local Scio Township taxpayers would feel about seeing the various increments in compensation. And there's certainly some people that would disagree with the levels that were adjusted to, and that was taken into account because the job of the compensation commission is also to, you know, attract the right people, compensate at the right level. And you always feel bad about spending, or at least the previous commission and probably this commission feel bad about spending Scio Township money. At the same time, the employees and the positions that we're talking about are very vital to the, you know, direction of the township. And it's like, you know, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. It's the same kind of thing. We wanted to make sure, and it was universal, and it probably is on this commission too, that the compensation is at a level that it will attract the skill set that you want to have making those significant decisions. And so that's why we burn through tens of thousands of dollars of our local taxpayers' contributions in the township, you know, to try and make sure this was fair and appropriate for the skill set that we are trying to fulfill here. And Renee, it sounds like you're gonna yell at me, but that's okay.
Do that to the colonel.
Oh,
I just one question to help this wise board to answer to me. I've lived in Dexter Township 30 years and now I've been in Scio for almost 15, my husband 30. I continue to be confused, and maybe it can be explained either by Aurora or someone here. I truly see the triad is kind of the lead of the township. And I continue to be confused, and I don't know that it is anything to do with this committee, so forgive me and just tell me it isn't, anyone who'd like to. But I'm continue to be confused at the position of the supervisor, and when you brought up about, you know, we're looking to recruit, great, we're talking about the position. And we're looking to bring in the best of the best. I mean, we're doing hours and hours of talking about that with this director of operations versus township manager versus who we can keep, who we can't. And I'm looking at the data that came, Aurora, from your searching other areas, and like, number one, and then it'll stop the conversation. Does this board have anything to do with a recommendation that the supervisor of Scio Township should be a full-time position? I find it baffling to me, and that could just be me, but I just would like to know, where do I write my letter to? Do I write it to Aurora, to this board, to the BOT? I'm serious, because I see us building strong things, and I'm just wondering, I keep looking at other townships and just my history being involved in previous townships. I don't understand, you know, we have a part-time position, and yet when we run into problems, we whoop that up to a full-time for a temporary, and then we bring it back down again. I'm just wondering, is this the place to talk about this or somewhere else? Anybody raise their hand and answer my question?
well, I can tell you,
We got somebody there.
I'm always very hesitant to speak up, but.
Oh,
yeah,
please.
right.
No, go ahead, John. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm doing
No,
it.
no,
I was.
We have to be brave.
So I just looked at all the other data we have, and the vast majority of them have full-time supervisors. If you do the filter on the full-time.
Except for
part-time.
cities, some of the smaller cities like Chelsea and Dexter, some of those are.
Don't they have mayors, not supervisors?
It's very different. It's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
So when I turn off and on the part-time filter, I only see, you know,
One, I
one
think.
new, Scio Township pops up.
Yeah.
So all the other ones, pretty much all the other ones, 70% of the 80%.
Southfield has a.
Do we know if they have managers though? We've always relied on a supervisor manager combination. So with the manager taking a lot of the everyday operational responsibilities. So the question is, does the supervisor have those in the other towns?
I wish I could tell you it's
Right.
right data.
We should get a handle on that, I think.
Good call.
And refresh my memory, I can't remember, it's been a while since Joyce has been there. When there's a Board of Trustees meeting, does Joyce have a vote?
No.
she's done.
So again, there we go with the fuzzies. you know, because I appreciate wanting to know, that would be a good point to know if the townships,
Manager's an employee.
correct, so,
I don't
so
follow,
it's,
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
I want to say this.
The responsibility of the vote.
The responsibility of the running of Scio Township and how we have, you know, I appreciate the duties. I mean, it's no different than all of the employee duties. But we also have a governing board is what I guess I will term. And so I'm just, we can just let it go. I'm just saying it seems odd that in a growing township, even though we're going to have a director of operations, possibly a manager, whichever way it ends up, it just, to me, there must be some reason. I don't know, and it'd be good to get that data. Maybe we can find that out, but I just wonder what anybody else thinks about it. And again, my main question is this the proper place to be
Yeah.
discussing it
I don't-
or not?
I would say no.
Okay, is that official
We
from
have
anybody?
been charged with the compensation for the trustees
Okay.
and
I've just been
that's
hearing
it.
mixed information, so.
what we don't tell the clerk what her job duties are. So we don't tell the
Okay.
supervisor what his or her job duties are.
Oh, I didn't,
Really, and
Yeah.
then reflect, well, then you should be full-time. We
Okay.
can argue
In
that,
2021. Did the compensation commission in 2021 formally recommend the salary of the supervisor based on a part-time position? Was that something that came out of that commission?
Yes, we actually had, and I don't remember the mechanics, but we based on the data we had in front of us, we suggested that that probably should have been a part-time position, not a full-time. And there was some other, actually, do you want to explain the history with
I just
that?
want to say that you didn't recommend anything. You determined the salary of the supervisor
got it.
at your
I just got my
meeting.
answer. Okay,
It just
Okay,
reminding you of the
actual-
point that I will drive home every
Yeah.
meeting.
Got
You're
it.
not making any recommendations when it comes to the township board. You are determining the salaries. And
The
then the
current
board
standard.
has to reject your determination
got it.
by a 2/3 vote if they don't want
yeah,
it to go into effect.
yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
Do you remember the
Thank you.
sequence of events there, the specific?
I do, and I referenced it a little bit, both former supervisor manager Clark and Commissioner Knowles, whose husband had served as supervisor and then supervisor with extra duties. Opined at the time that they thought that the supervisor duties were part-time. In some ways, and that's essentially what Commissioner Klubeck is asking is, does this board still think that? In the end, you can answer that question when you make your determination of the supervisor's salary. I'll also remind you that whether you determine the salary to be $10,000, which of course would not take effect during this current term of office, or $200,000, there's no statutory requirement to show up for work for any certain number of hours. The job of the elected officials is to do their job.
Mhm.
And they don't punch a time clock, at least they don't have to. And so, like, again, you are tasked with determining what Scio Township should pay these 7 people.
Thank
That's
you.
very helpful.
That helps quite a bit. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Perfect. Okay, getting back to our discussion of the salary history, anybody have any other insights or input into the pay since 2016? I'm thinking No. All right, so, what other resources, so I'm gonna jump to the next item on our agenda. What other resources do we think we need? So we do want to have a better idea of the, responsibilities of the manager, which will show up on Tuesday before our meeting next week, right? And then, we are gonna ask our treasurer, supervisor and clerk if they can come in for 15 minutes to tell us what they are doing,
Right. Yep.
right? And what they think they should be doing if they're not actually doing it. What else do we want in terms of additional resources? Or what could help us make the decision?
I guess I would like to know which cost of living increase factor we're going to use and what they are.
Okay, which cost of living increase we're gonna look at?
Factors, is
Yeah.
it CPIU, is it something else?
Okay,
Because, well, frankly, I was just thinking about this the other day. You can tell me that inflation in 2024 was 3%. And I'm going to see maybe for some things, but there are some things that have impacted my life more than others. I'm thinking about food prices, for example. You cannot tell me food prices only increased 3% last year. Not in certain categories. You look at the price of eggs, for example. Special circumstance, but still, price of services is going up. People are charging more per hour to come and do things for you. And don't get me started on insurance. I paid nearly 50% more last year and I'm gonna get socked again this year.
There was a huge increase this year.
Huge
Across the board with
increase.
Insurance.
Yes, so there are areas that impact our lives more that maybe we should think about. Especially in a township like this. Where, okay, are we affected more by the cost of living increases than, let's say, other communities? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's worth talking about.
okay, do you have
How could we find that out? Yeah,
a,
how could we answer that question? How are we affected more than other communities?
I would just say we need to look at more than just the published
PPI?
PPI data. We can look at what was the impact in the state of Michigan, for example.
Well, and if we do that, does that mean we need to, try and tone down any increase for our constituents or citizens? Because their tax bills are going up and their insurance bills are going up and they have a hard time buying eggs? Or is it because we're gonna, okay, all right, I just.
No, we're here to
yeah.
determine the salary
All
of the elected positions.
That's the answer.
Okay,
Can we, and actually I come in here conflicted. Because part of me says they're already getting at least fairly compensated. This is in my mind right now. It's
Mhm.
not final, but right now. I believe they're being fairly compensated. I believe the increases of the last period was significant and brought us at least into line to where, you know, it's a doable thing. It's a living, what do you call it? Reasonable living salary. So there's that. On the other hand, I do know some things are jumping rapidly in price. I am also wondering about the cost of housing in Scio, as opposed to, again, the national average, how quickly are taxable values increasing over the last few years and where are they likely to go? Because that's another consideration. I mean, it's not, it used to be a lot cheaper to live here. That is changing.
Yeah.
Right?
I would argue that I don't like the argument that they're getting compensated very well. In my opinion, they're making a lot of money, so we don't need to give them a cost of living increase. I was compensated very well in my position and we get cost of living, you know, I don't know, I'm sure people thought, well, you get paid too much for what you do as it is. But we got a cost of living. I don't think you can look at that. I think you need to look at what is the, you know, rate of increase in the area, in the state. Everybody's costs are going up. you're used to living on $99,000 a year and now everything got more expensive. You decide to put your 2 kids in a private school because, hey, I'm making good money and I should get a little raise, a bump every year, and then we don't give them a bump. That's,
I never got a cost of living increase in my professional life.
Yeah.
I had to go say, excuse me, boss. So,
yeah, see,
that's
that's,
my experience.
But
I
they
know
can't-
in others you get them.
yeah.
They can't do. Cause we're the boss, right? They can't come to us.
Yeah, our people can't, yeah, what you're talking about, yeah.
Oh, right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying,
Right.
there's no need for us to say they must have an automatic.
oh no, there's no
CPI,
must about it.
Right, the question is,
Right.
are we continuing to make sure they are compensated fairly?
Yeah.
And that's another data point. I just want to look at more than the federal CPI. I want to look at other factors.
I think that's fair.
So I think it might have been 4 years ago, Jim Dries, pulled in a couple of different, published indexes, for, pricing, and, I'm not remembering the specific indexes. He actually, you just watched videos from, did you see any of that?
I can't remember. I had ran so many of them in the last
Okay.
couple days. I'm
Looking at the
sorry.
Michigan Education Development Corporation website, they have a price comparison. There's a bunch of them out here for different communities in Michigan.
Oh, okay,
So
so,
I think there's probably data out there. I'm not saying we use this, I'm just saying, there's probably data out there we can find.
yeah, how will we determine?
I'll spend some time and look into it. I mean,
Okay,
not enough time here, but
all right,
I'll-
that's great. We have a,
What site is that?
there's a bunch, but the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, they have a cost of living calculator for different areas of Michigan. And, I could probably ultimately just look at getting their data and using it, but not this calculator, but most of these Michigan. But we can find the data. I don't think that's gonna be hard.
okay, so that's something that we can talk about in our next meeting then. And obviously, Jonathan, that sounds like a great start. Anybody else that wants to
Yeah.
pick up additional information
Just
on,
gonna do
on
research,
what,
discovery.
what reference for a cost of living adjustment. That's great.
I'd be interested in knowing more about your experience with those different cost of living factors, because I mean, it's always just been like from at the university at least, you get 3% this year, you get 2% this year. So I'd be interested in how those other ones are calculated. I don't know that much about them.
Okay, so, so we got a couple of additional pieces of information that we'll have on our next meeting. Other resources that we should request or track down? Are y'all starting to feel like we're zeroing in a little bit more now? This,
Yes,
Will you be reaching out to the treasurer, clerk and supervisor?
to ask them
Ask
to
them
come in and describe,
next
yes.
week?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll specifically ask them to join us for about 15 minutes to describe their responsibilities and activities. That,
Kind of then or never in a way. We need them next week, right?
well, we can schedule meetings other than Friday or something.
Right.
But yeah,
so
I think
I'll
that's,
throw one more point out there. And that is some people come a lot more prepared to these meetings based on the 2023. Okay. So I would be careful to constrain, when we say 15 minutes, we don't want to take more of their time than we need, right? So I want to make sure that they understand, we've got a list of your statutory duties. Can you just tell us, summarize for us in 5 minutes what you're doing, and then allow us to say, for instance, I will have a question for the clerk. With the changes in voting rules, how has that affected your workload? And she answered some of that in 2023. I'd like to see, well, now with the expanded days of early voting and everything else, what else has changed since 2 years ago that we might want to consider? So I'm just saying we're not looking for a big presentation, right? We're looking for like a 5-minute summary and then Q&A.
I would agree that we're not looking for a big presentation. I'm a little hesitant to say a 5-minute summary, is that,
I'd say a lot in 5 minutes,
okay.
if you're prepared.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we're not that far apart. We're both saying they could join us for, say 15 minutes to describe. And are you thinking that they would be here for a 30-minute presentation or just,
I don't want to tell them 15 minutes and then have them take half an hour each because they all have busy schedules. If we want 30 minutes, let's just say 30 minutes.
okay,
Or 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes kind of thing.
okay,
I just want to set the expectations so that if I'm, the third in line,
yeah,
I'm not waiting an hour longer than I thought I would be.
yeah,
That's a
Well,
courtesy.
if they
Okay.
each have the job description that we have, and you ask them to join us at our next meeting, look over your job description and scribble in what additional duties do you have or duties you don't have, how has it changed? So you come prepared and you can easily get all that done in 5 minutes.
okay, that might be a good
I
way
like that
to,
idea, and maybe indicate the distinction between job duties that are yours and you do versus job duties that are yours and your deputy does.
And also what you're doing
Yeah.
as temporary is not something we're listening to.
Correct, yeah,
We
but I
need
think
to
it's
make that
important
part
to,
clear.
to separate between the role and. the
I would
deputy.
agree. Yeah, I just think we have to make sure because there's so much temporary happening right now and
Yeah, but we
that's
can't-
not
yeah,
our
we can't
position to
adjust
use
salary.
that as a.
So yeah, if somebody asks,
Yeah,
Right.
it's totally
Yeah.
different.
somebody asked me, is that what you're doing
Yeah.
today? You
Yeah.
should be able to look at it pretty quick and go, I don't do that anymore because of the change in the way we vote. But I've added this and this and this. And so a brief update is all we're asking.
Yeah,
okay.
we really are standing on the shoulders of the previous committee that did all this work a couple of years ago, which is
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
We did a lot of heavy drinking too, which is a big part of it.
I didn't hear about that.
No, just, that is a joke for my
Is
my
that
wife
fine?
still.
Is Rob listening?
I wanted to get back to your comment though about the clerk and additional responsibilities related to the changes in election laws.
Yeah.
In theory, those same changes impacted every other clerk in the state or every other clerk in our reference though, right?
Yes.
So, so even though that responsibility, I would argue, increased significantly because of that. Unless that, well, how did that not influence the compensation that everybody else in our spreadsheet, other clerk, everybody else, all the other clerks in the spreadsheet are receiving too,
It
so,
may or may not have,
okay,
but the determination for the clerk's current salary was made 2 years ago based on information at the time. If that information is changed, we should at least consider it. That's all I'm saying.
okay, all right,
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense, great.
Because there could be other compensation committees like us that are gonna adjust these.
We're making, yeah,
salaries.
exactly, we're
Exactly.
making the same decisions right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. Okay, so, so kind of summarizing what I'm gonna ask the three positions, is, based on starting with the statutory responsibilities, what is it you're, doing versus what's on here, what you're actually doing versus what's on here? Also, what are you doing that is temporary because we're lacking a manager slash administrator slash
Supervisor.
director of operations, yeah.
Operation.
And so which of those roles are temporary, which will go away? And then also what is your deputy doing in the case of our clerk and our treasurer?
What does
Right?
your deputy do?
What?
What does your deputy do?
Yeah, what does your deputy do? Not
And
deputy.
all of this is just so we can filter out the factors that we determine salary based on, right? Which are the permanent statutory, as opposed to temporary or delegated.
Cause I'm not even sure we need to know temporary, do we?
Yeah.
I
we
don't
really
You don't want, you wanna keep that out of the mix, it's just us or noise.
Now, you mean in terms of,
Long term, yeah, I mean, temporary stuff that's going on right now, people shifted around because we don't have this operations director.
Right.
That
So you
goes
might-
away by the time our recommendations would go into effect. So that's really good.
we would hope so, yes. Yeah, all right, that, good conclusion. Anybody have any other thoughts on additional information we should have or collect or ask for our next meeting?
This job description, I'm guessing was
These are the statutories.
the statutories.
Yeah.
So to tell them, do not add to this temporary jobs. We don't want to know about those. We want to know if any of these statutories changed or added to.
Well, when you say statutories have changed,
Well,
we want to know what additional things they're doing on a
Yes.
permanent basis.
on a permanent basis.
Yeah.
Correct.
And, you know, and tell them, you don't have to put anything temporary down.
Okay.
Because we're not looking at that.
Is that where you guys are too?
I, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd just like to throw out, there was one question asked in 2023 that as a listener, listening in, made me uncomfortable. And that was asking them if they planned on running again. Because to me, that's, for the purposes of salary determination, that's out of bounds.
Correct.
So I would be more comfortable in saying, how satisfied and happy are you in your role? And what role does salary play in that? That seems fine to me. But we're not here evaluating the person, right? We're evaluating the position.
Do we even need to ask them if they're happy in their position? Because they've got the job, these are the duties, and we're paying for that. And
On the other hand, if there's something they're finding unsatisfying that's related to the job itself, we might want to know that because it might affect our ability to attract someone else into that role down the road. So maybe we could phrase that a little differently.
Well,
that's
But
not
we're not hiring.
that's not our,
that's not why we're
yeah,
here.
not our role.
I hear what you're saying. but
Yeah.
Then we cross the line. Like,
All right, if
sort of
we-
In a hiring.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right. If I just said, well, I was okay with the question, what role did salary play in your decision? And then someone can say, oh, I was so underpaid, right? But no, maybe something like that, strictly related to salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is some good discussions here, right? But I also talking to this person, recognizing that what we're doing isn't related to the individual is a kind of a fascinating experience as opposed to out in the real world. All right, I think we're probably drawing to end of what we need to accomplish today. It is 3:40 Eastern Standard Time.
May I ask which of you is preparing, whom among you is preparing minutes?
Commissioner Hergod,
Yes,
raise your hand.
I've
this
been
time.
trying. They may not be as
Okay,
well said. but-
I have my own notes. You're free to ask me if you
I'm
would
gonna
like.
send you notes.
Okay,
Rod, get that video up as soon as possible.
oh,
Yeah, seriously, that was very helpful to get the video up because it allowed me to cross-check.
okay.
And you can run it at like 1.5 speed, so you don't have to sit there. If you don't mind.
actually, the voices just go fast. They don't.
They
change
don't
the
go
pitch.
higher, in
No,
pitch, but they do
yeah.
go faster.
All right, we might need a motion to adjourn then. We don't have any public comment afterwards like the other stuff, so anybody wanna,
Make a motion to adjourn.
all right? Do we have a second?
Second,
I think we did the other way around.
I think so too.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned.
Right.
Thank you, John.
John, I've got a recommendation for you. I've got some data that might help you speed up things for next time. Would you like to hear it?
Yes,
Sure.
thank you, Rob.
Um, remember that trustee Knoll at the last board meeting said it could take 6 months to a year to hire a manager or director of operations. And I never did hear where the data came from. Jonathan, you asked if it was the MTA. I never did hear where the data came from. Was that something compiled by Aurora, or did you get that from a source?
The data I displayed today came from a spreadsheet that all of us received. It'll be in the packet. It came from Aurora.
Rob?
Yes.
It's Aurora. The source is the Michigan Community Dashboard, Michigan Department of Treasury.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then last thing, the agenda packet is out for next week for the Board of Trustees, and the employees are getting 3.1% for the COLA increase for the employees. So I think the board should not get more of a cost of living increase than the employees do, and just know that they're using 3.1%. Thanks for letting me input after the meeting.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.